Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Career Guidance Series US. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. My name is Luqman Siddiq, and I am the coordinator of Alfaisal MedHub under the International Office at Alfaisal University, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I am honored to be your host for today. For those of you who don't know what Alfaisal MedHub is an initiative under the umbrella of the International Office, College of Medicine, that aims at creating an online global community of medical students. Alfaisal MedHub covers a broad range of topics that are common to medical students all around the world. Our primary objective here at Alfaisal MedHub is to help medical students learn more about the career opportunities available after graduating, as well as the steps involved in pursuing them. As you all are aware, the Career Guidance Series are conducted in partnership with AMBOSS. The NRMP rank order list is something that can help you get into programs best suited to you, assuming you do it right. Our talk today is going to be focusing on just that. Today, we are excited to bring to you a new webinar on the Career Guidance Series US titled How to Develop Your NRMP Rank List, which will be delivered by Dr. Eiad Habib. Dr. Eiad Habib is a graduate of the 7th batch of Alfaisal University and received his diploma in 2020. He worked as a teaching assistant for a year following that. He's currently pursuing his internal medicine residency training at Mayo Clinic, Arizona. Doctor, thank you so much for taking time from your schedule to host this to give this webinar. You can start whenever you're ready. Just before you start, I'd like to ask if you'll be taking the questions like as they come, or would you be taking them at the end?
All right. So I'll be taking them at the end. I think that's better to just so we don't disturb the flow, and then we'll have a lot of time for questions.
Sure, Doctor.
Luqman, thank you very, very much for this introduction. Thank you to Alfaisal MedHub and to Samiha, to Aisha, and to Dr. Ismail Shakir. Very excited to be here today. Just give me a second. I'm sharing my screen. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay. All right, so assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'll just dive straight into it. Today I'll be talking about, how to create your NRMP rank order list, the logistics of things and the thought process that goes behind creating the list, and a few statistics as well. And hopefully it's beneficial for the people that are applying this year. I'm going to be talking specifically about the rank order list, nothing else about the match. So, just the advanced things, assuming that, by now anyone in this position who's here is already aware of everything else that has to do with the match. So just to start with this match process, I'm sure you guys now have realized the difference between ERAS and NRMP. So NRMP are the ones that actually take care of the match for us. And really, it's just the applicants submit a rank order list, the programs submit a rank order list for applicants as well. They independently rank each other, and then it basically comes up with a match. Typically, programs, they rank about 10 times the number of residency spots available, because typically it's known every year it kind of increases. I think last year it was up to 12, where like they go down 12 spots on the rank list to match one candidate. So that's why if they have 10 spots, they would probably be ranking somewhere between 100 and 120 people, because that's what typically happens. And it's also important to know that the algorithm that the match uses is applicant-centered, meaning that it prioritizes you as the applicant, not the programs themselves. And I'm going to be talking about what this means with the demonstration at the end. Okay. So if you haven't seen this video already, I think you should definitely watch it. It kind of explains the match process in very simple terminology and shows you exactly what applicant-centered means per se. The link is down here, and you can just search NRMP matching algorithm. It's published by the NRMP on YouTube. So just watch it in case you haven't already. And it's also worth mentioning that, I think his name was Dr. Alvin Roth. This was an economist that came up with this match. They called it the double binding labor market match. And they won a Nobel Prize for this algorithm. And right now it's being used in public schools here. It's being used in other job sectors, but it started with the NRMP match. Now, in terms of when you should be preparing your rank order list, well, it should be right now. First of all, you just, in case you haven't already, you need to make sure that you register through the NRMP. The deadline for the early registration is January 31st, and that's an $85 fee. So make sure if you haven't already registered, make sure that you do that and that you update it on ERAS. The ranking opens this year on February 1st, and then it's going to stay open for about 5 weeks with the deadline on March 2nd. And it's also important to note that the deadline for the rank order list is the same for the applicants and for the programs as well. So a lot of stuff can happen in, between February and March. All right, so how do you start? You just want to start by creating a list of the programs that you interviewed at and that you're hopefully willing to rank. And then you're going to come up with some criteria to help you determine what to, how highly to rank them. And these are really the main factors that you need to consider. These are the 10 that I thought were the most important. And I'll talk about them. We're going to spend some time on this slide just because I think this is the bulk of the lecture. Now, since we're talking from an IMG standpoint, visa status is really the most important thing. Of course, if you don't need a visa, then this does not make a difference for you. But typically, you're going to realize that we have the J1 and we have the H1B. I'm sure by now you've seen or heard of the differences between both. But essentially, the J1 is the exchange visa that allows you to be in the US for up to 7 years. However, there is the 2-year home rule where basically after the 7 years, you would have to return to your home country before you're allowed to independently practice in the US, unless you apply for that Conrad waiver, which would be serving for 3 years in a medically underserved area. After which you can switch your visa and become so that it becomes an immigrant visa. So that's the J1 visa. And typically there are a few hassles with the J1 visa, mainly getting the statement of need, which you can get from your country of origin or from the country where you are currently residing. But these are mainly the hassles of the J1. There are a few other things related to J1, but these are the pertinent things for us as doctors going into the future. The other visa, which is the H1B, which is the non-immigrant visa, that allows you to stay in the US for up to 6 years before you can basically apply for a change of status and apply for, immigration and green card and so on. And that visa, the years that you spend here, they count towards your green card later on. It does not require a statement of need. And you basically, all you need to do is just some paperwork that you file personally with the hospital that you end up matching with. So it doesn't have any of that hassle, but it does have the 6 years, like I said. So for someone that wants to go into fellowship, mainly not just one fellowship, like an advanced fellowship, a lot of them right now you're going to exceed that 6 years. So it's going to go up to 7 years. For example, if someone wants to do like cardiology and then they want to do interventional or EP, that's going to increase that number. So you need to have, by the end of the 5th year or the 6th year, you need to have figured out someone to sponsor you. And typically that's also tough because a hospital usually wouldn't sponsor you unless you signed a contract with them. And it's kind of hard to sign the contract when you still haven't even started the advanced fellowship that you're about to do. So that's one of the disadvantages of an H1B, where basically you don't really have that with a J1 because, you're going all the way. The other thing is that the number of programs that offers J1 and H1B, typically for H1B, it's the highest ranked places or the places where basically they're offering the H1B because they want to attract applicants to them. But most university programs only offer J1. And that is true for residency and for fellowship as well. So even if you started your residency on H1B, you have to keep in mind that once you do apply for fellowship, you will be limiting your options if you want to continue on the H1B. Because there is, one of the things that people sometimes utilize is that they can switch their H1B to a J1. That can happen. And sometimes they do that at the end of the residency so that they can match into a J1 program in a good university program. You can do that, but then all the J1 rules are still going to apply to you. However, the J1 visa, you cannot switch that to an H1B. So, there's a lot of details that go into this visa status stuff. You just have to sit with yourself and realize, what are my priorities in terms of, am I planning to stay in the US for the future? Am I just planning to do my training and come back to my country anyway? In which case the J1 would be a lot better. Am I planning to do a prolonged fellowship? Do I know that my application is good enough so that I'll be okay if I start on an H1B, I'll be okay finding a fellowship program that only offers H1B. So all of these things are things that you need to take into consideration. And I think that visa status is the most important thing that you rank your programs based on, if you do have a very strong preference towards something. So that's the visa stuff. Number two is the location. Location really has a lot of factors into it. Number one is the location of the program in the city itself, whether that's a desirable city or not. And I mentioned this in my previous talk when I was talking about how to apply for programs. For us as IMGs, I don't think that, location as in me desiring to be in California or New York or Michigan or I don't think that that's something that we should take into account per se. I feel like we should focus on all the other things, but I would take it into account if it's a red flag, like if it's a really bad area, if it's an unsafe area, if it's an area in the middle of nowhere where I know I won't have access to anyone around me or family or so on, that's when location becomes important. But then if I'm just ranking based on, this is a desirable city and this isn't, I wouldn't really use that per se. So that's the first thing about location, the city or state. The second thing is just, proximity to people. I think that this is very, very, very important in residency. To me, if someone that has family or friends or anyone around them in the US, and they're interviewing at a program that is around that area, and they're in between that program and a program that's might be slightly better, but there's no one around them, I would definitely pick the one that has family and friends around you, because residency is tough. Residency is going to need, you need to have some support, whether it's family or friends or things like that. But so I think that that's something that is underestimated and a lot of people don't take it into account, but I think it definitely should be one of your factors. The other thing that comes to location is also proximity to the hospital. You're going to realize this with bigger cities, like places like New York or Boston or Chicago. A lot of the hospitals there, they're in really good areas. And these areas are basically, you're not going to be able to afford living there on a resident salary unless you're going to be sharing an apartment or something like that. So typically what residents would do is that they would live a bit further to the hospital, like 20 minutes, 25 minutes away. And I think that that makes a big difference. I think that spending 20, 25 minutes away, which means about an hour every day going to and from work, really takes a toll on you, given how busy the residency schedule is. So I would much rather have a program which is, the places around it are affordable, and you can see during your interview that all the residents are living around the area within 5 to 10 minutes. That's much better than living a bit further, because you're in a big city and a big place and a good name, and you really spend a lot of time to commute to places. The next thing is fellowship placement. Now, fellowship placement is, to me, at least objectively, the most accurate marker of how highly you should be ranking your programs. And this is particularly important if you know that you're going to be going into fellowship. Because some people, their primary aim is just going into just doing the residency and then directly starting to practice, whether it's in internal medicine or family medicine or pediatrics or neurology. So if that's the case, then fellowship placement is not really that important, because the ACGME has very strict criteria for any residency program, and any residency program has to abide by these criteria in order to be accredited. So the training more or less is going to be the same wherever you go, in terms of, like I said, primary care and general practice. But where it's going to be different is in terms of fellowship placement. If it's a program that is just starting, or a program that doesn't have a lot of graduates, or a program that has graduates but they're not really matching into the fellowship that you want, yes, it's not impossible for you to match later on, but you're just, not as likely to match there as a program where people are matching there consistently every year. So fellowship placement is really, really important. And that to me was one of the strongest things that I decided my rank list based on. Now, when it comes to fellowship placement, let's say I want to do cardiology and, I have a few programs that I'm stuck between them. I'm not really sure which one is good because this has pros and this has pros and this has cons and this has cons. And, their fellowships, they both match cardiology into good places, but one of the places matches into, a bit of a higher tier compared to the other one. To me, that is not enough to rank the program over the other one if it has negatives. What does that mean? That means that, if I know that every year they're matching into cardiology, then I know, inshallah, I'm going to be able to match into cardiology anyway. I wouldn't care as much about the prestige if I am giving away something else. And you're going to realize this with some programs because you're going to be like, this program has really strong fellowship connections, and this program also matches good fellowships. But that first program really overworks you, really drains you. It has this connotation of being malignant in terms of how busy it is and how much of a workload it is, and the program director is not very supportive. The other place doesn't have all these cons, but the places where they match into cardiology are not as great. I would still take that program over the other one, just because if it's going to end up giving you what you want anyway, then that to me should be enough. And I should start looking at the other factors in this list, not just fellowship, So to me, it's just a checklist, not, which one is higher tier and which one matches more and so on. That's just my personal opinion. And this is really, the experience would be really skewed if you're looking into a competitive fellowship. If you're going to end up going into a fellowship that's not really competitive, then also it doesn't really matter where you do your training because all of them are going to have the same criteria. And then you can just look at the other factors on this list. The next thing is going to be program size. And for program size, there is no good answer here. It just depends on your priorities and what you think. Generally, smaller programs are going to be about 10 or less. Larger programs are going to be between 11 to 26. And then, medium programs are going to be between 11 to 26. And then larger programs are going to be like over 26. Sometimes they go up to like 40, 50, 60. This becomes up to you, but it definitely is a factor in terms of ranking, because if you're having a program with low number of residents, odds are, you're not going to be able to interact with many different people. You're not going to be able to form relationships with many different people. If something ends up happening and you need to switch, one of your rotations or one of your calls, if someone got sick and you need to travel, or if you have a conference or so on, and you only have like 5 or 6 other people working, then it becomes really tough to move things around and the schedule doesn't become as flexible. That's one. On the other hand, you would form close connections with these people because you only have like 5 or 6 people. But with a bigger program, there's always backup. There's always a jeopardy system in place. If you leave, you wouldn't really be affecting the workflow and you wouldn't feel bad about it. And they would be receptive to that. But at the same time, with bigger programs, the chance of getting to know your co-residents as much is not really going to be true. You're probably going to end up having the same 4 or 5 friends, and then the others are just, people that I see in different rotations. So this, to me, also should be a factor when you're deciding how highly to rank your programs. And also, when you're looking at fellowship placement, you need to keep in mind the program size. So if my program is graduating 20 residents a year and they're only matching 3 into fellowship, but these 3 places are good, that doesn't tell me much about the program. That tells me that these 3 people worked really hard in order to get to where they are, and potentially other people applied and didn't match. So, but if I'm getting just 1 or 2, but the program size is only 7 or 8, that tells me, maybe the 3 or 4 other people just weren't applying to fellowship this year, or they decided to go hospitalist or decided to do other things. So that would be a bit better. So program size is always something to keep at the back of your mind. It's not as important as the other things, but it's something to definitely keep at the back of your mind. The next thing is research, and research is really, with some people, if you're not interested in a very competitive fellowship or something, it becomes up to you. It becomes about your priorities. Do I enjoy research? Do I like to do research in general, really, whether it's like presentations or projects or just writing articles or even doing like big randomized control trials or so on. Some people that interests them. So that for them would be a priority. Other people, they don't really, enjoy research that much. So to them, it's not really something that they should focus on. However, if you do want to end up in a competitive fellowship, even if you do hate research, research needs to be a priority, and you need to have a program that supports the research, because otherwise you're not going to be able to match into the fellowship that you want. Unfortunately, with the way things have been going over the past few years, especially for competitive fellowships, like I'm talking about IM, like cardiology and GI and so on, you need a lot of research in order to, first of all, make connections and then get to the bigger places. So if I end up training at a place where I don't see research opportunities, even if there's one or two people that match into that program, into that fellowship from that program, I wouldn't rank it as high, just because finding the research opportunities is going to be tough for me, and residency is already tough. So that's going to be even a greater toll, as opposed to another program that, readily has research opportunities available. And that if I end up matching there, people are going to be like, this person wants cardiology. They will be reaching out to other people on their behalf, giving them projects. If I decide on my own to reach out to cardiologists, I know for a fact that each cardiologist is going to have 2 or 3 projects running anyway, and they can add me very easily. So that takes a whole lot of stress off of you, and that makes you focus more on the work of residency, because you know that research is going to come anyway. So to me, if you do want a competitive fellowship, research is a priority, and that's something that you definitely should take into account. The next thing is perks, and perks really aren't talked about a whole lot. American students in general, they should strongly focus on perks, because, the rest of the majority of the list of the programs that they have are more or less similar. So they focus on these perks to differentiate between programs. But for us, there are a few things that actually make a difference. One being, for example, free parking. That is something that, you would think that you take that for granted. But if most New York programs do not offer free parking, just because, the city is really crowded, and they actually end up asking the residents to pay like $200 out of their paycheck every month for parking. Like, to me, that's crazy, because that ends up taking a big toll on your salary already. And then on the fact that if you're not going to end up paying, I need to worry about parking every day, and I need to know when I'm going to drive. I need to drive like 10 minutes before so that I can find a parking spot and so on. So this actually takes a toll, and you would think that this is not something that makes a difference, but it does. The second thing is free food. The lunch allowance that programs give. The majority of the programs I interviewed at had the lunch allowance, but I did hear from other people that some other places, they don't actually offer that, and that ends up being a big amount of your paycheck every month as well. So to me, if again, I wouldn't this wouldn't be the breaking point for a program, but if I'm worried between 2 or 3 programs and I'm not sure which one to decide, and this is one of them, then I would actually definitely take that into account, because it ends up making you less stressed about other things and just more focused about work. I don't need to worry about the food or the parking, or sometimes even the medical insurance, because some programs actually now offer free medical insurance to their residents instead of you having to pay for it. So again, these are minor things, but overall they do play a role. The next factor is the program director. Program director is really, it's one of the most important things. I know that we have a lot of important things on this slide, but really program director is so important. The program director sets the tone for how the program is going to run. It sets the tone for how your co-residents are going to be. It sets the tone for the attitude of your faculty and the teaching style, and how well you're supported in terms of, ancillary staff and so on. So it's really, really, really important to feel like when you are interviewing, to feel like this program director actually cares about the residents. It's not just doing this as another day job that I'm doing every day, and I've been doing it for 10 years and it's just become something that I'm used to. No, you actually feel like this program director goes out of his or her way to help the residents, to make sure that the residents are heard, to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to make sure they have a smooth experience during the residency. So this is really important. And then it also becomes important on a personal level, because you're going to realize this once you start residency. Residency is at least 3 years. It can go all the way up to like 5 or 6 or 7. So it's a long time of your life, and things are going to happen during that time. Sometimes they're unexpected things, and sometimes they're things that need someone on the other side to be very understanding. So if I do feel that this program director really is not flexible at all, then I would be a bit worried that if anything were to go wrong, I would actually have to suffer the consequences, and I would have to think about things a million times before I'm able to do things. Sometimes our parents get sick, or we have an unexpected death, or we have to do this or that, or, stuff in general. So just having a very understanding program director that is not strict and can actually listen to you and care about the residents and figure out ways to help you, that plays a big role. The other thing with program directors is they have a very, very, very big say when it comes to fellowship. That program director letter that you're going to get at the end of your second year and you're going to use to apply for fellowship, which is a requirement, it makes a big difference, because if you have a supportive program director who has good connections, sometimes that by itself can get you the interviews at the really good places. And that's how the residents are known to match at these good places year after year, because the program director goes out of their way and helps these people. While in other places, the program director is like, we have research opportunities. If you want, you can start something, or you can reach out, or you can do blah, blah, blah. Typically, we had one person that matched into cardiology over the past 3 years, and it's because they worked hard. This happened during one of my interviews. So what does this tell you? This tells you that, I could match into this fellowship that I want, and I could have whatever I want, but I'm going to end up having to do that all on my own. I'm not going to have any support from anyone in the program. So that plays a big role as well. The next thing is going to be the interview experience. And the interview experience, it's kind of a very gray area, because some people, they just end up having a bad day, whether it's the interviewer or the interviewee. They just end up having a bad day and they don't get good vibes about their day in general, or about their interview in general. So to me, that's not something that you need to use when you're actually ranking your programs. But the interview experience, it's focused more on actually the vibe that you got from the program. Did you feel like the residents are overworked? Did you feel like the residents looked tired? Or did you feel like the residents were satisfied and their input was taken into consideration? Did you feel like the program in general and the program schedule and everything else, did you feel like I'm okay with that? Or did you have some weird vibes about it? Oh, why is the program director doing this thing or saying that thing? Or why did he shut the resident up when the resident said that thing? You will realize these small things that are objective, and these help you deciding how to rank the programs. The other thing is the hospital and program environment in general. That's something that is very tough to do if you've never been to the place and you've never worked with the people. But sometimes when you're dealing with just the interview day in general, you see the way that the program director talks about the residents and the way that the residents talk about the program leadership. It kind of sometimes gives you an idea that, the residents are happy here, or actually the residents are overworked and something seems fishy. And usually that gut feeling of something seems fishy, to me, that could play a role in how you rank programs. And I'm sure by now, whoever is planning to rank programs, each of you has had their own experience, and each of you has had that 1 or 2 times where you feel like something feels off here, something doesn't make sense. So I would actually use that when you're ranking programs. And then finally, the last thing is the workload and the schedule. Now, this is important. This is really important, and this isn't focused on as much, at least it wasn't focused on by me and by my colleagues, because it's like, it's a good program, good training. I don't really care about the workload or the schedule or. But actually, it does make a big difference, because as you're going to see now, it plays a role into the other things. Some of my friends are the ACGME patient cap is 10 per intern. So 10 per intern, and I think it's 18 per senior. The number of programs that actually have the 10 patient cap are very, very, very limited. I've only seen it in a few. Some of my friends have that, but it's very limited. The majority of programs have the 8 patient cap, and then some other programs have 6. So my friends, when I talk to my friends that have the 10 patient cap, they are very, very, very overworked. They are very tired. They are very stressed. They don't have time to talk to their families or to focus on research or to go out and have fun, just because it gives you that when they tell you that our patient cap is 10, that by itself can tell you that the workload is going to be very busy. But when the patient cap is 6 or 8, that tells you that, 8 is the average. So that tells you it's going to be like the majority of US programs. So that's okay. That's a good thing. And then if it tells you it's 6, that means it's more of a relaxed program. The program is more on the relaxed side, and it's, you're going to have time for research and to have fun and to travel and to talk to your families and so on. So really, it becomes an issue when you see that 10 patient cap, or even 9, or even when you're comparing between 2 or 3 programs and one is like 7 and one is 9 or 10, for a fact, just based on those caps, that the workload is going to be more, and that probably the time that I'm going to have to myself and to focus on my own stuff is going to be less. The other thing that I've actually seen people pay attention to, and I actually don't think that they should pay attention to, is the schedule. I'm sure by now you've seen the X plus Y schedules and then the traditional schedules with continuity clinic. There was this consensus that initially X plus Y is better, and that's what the majority of programs are switching to, and that traditional is busier, and you're going to end up having to go to clinic midway through your day, and you're still going to have to be answering pagers and taking admissions and so on. So a lot of the programs that implemented the X plus Y system started using that as a way to be like, we're better than the traditional programs that use continuity clinic. And just for whoever is watching and isn't sure what X plus Y and traditional means, X plus Y is basically you get a certain amount of inpatient weeks followed by a guaranteed amount of outpatient weeks. So X plus Y, typically the most common one is 4 plus 1, where you would be getting a 4-week inpatient rotation followed by a guaranteed 1 week of outpatient clinics, with its golden weekend, where Saturday and Sunday are going to be off. Okay, so every 5 weeks in that example, you guarantee yourself a golden weekend. Traditional scheduling system, it works basically by every week. So you're on inpatient or outpatient, depends on the rotation that you're on. But every week, you have 1 half day where you have to do continuity clinic. And that's just going to be something that you do for the rest of the year. And typically, with some programs, that would be like you do the first half of the day in an inpatient setting, and then in the afternoon, you would just go and do clinic and focus on your patients. Some programs tell you that, once you do continuity clinic and you're there, no one is going to talk to you. You don't have any responsibilities. You hand off all your assignments to the people that are staying at the hospital, while other places, they're going to tell you, no, you're responsible for the admissions. You're responsible for answering pagers about your patients, and you're responsible for your own clinic patients. So that's where it becomes a bit stressful. The perks of X plus Y is that it has a guaranteed golden weekend. So it ends up being more golden weekends during the during the year. And then the other thing is it guarantees that you're going to take an outpatient break or breather every month or so. Because with traditional, sometimes you can do 2 or 3 months inpatient in a row, and it becomes really stressful and really tiring. So these are the perks of X plus Y. The perks of traditional, on the other hand, is that number one, you're going to have more elective time. And that's really important in second and third year, because you're going to need those electives, because you're going to apply to these things when you want to apply to fellowship. You need to have 4 or 5 months, for example, of cardiology, and these are going to be electives. If I'm doing the X plus Y, the flexibility is not as great to choose electives, so the elective time ends up being less for people with an X plus Y system. The second thing is, for your continuity clinic patients, you're going to end up with the traditional system. You're going to end up seeing the same panel of patients that you're used to seeing the entire 3 years. What does that mean? I get to develop connections. I get to know the patients. And every time they come back, I know who this person is. I know what we did for them a month ago or 2 months ago or 2 weeks ago. And now I'm following them up and I'm making changes. But with X plus Y, typically, just because the work is so quick, what ends up happening is that in your Y week, you're going to end up seeing X patients, but then in your next Y week, it's going to be a completely different group of patients. So the continuity of care is not maintained. But the downsides of traditional is that you're not going to have as much golden weekends. Sometimes it's busier. So what does this mean in the end? It just means that each of them has pros and cons. There is no established better scheduling system than the other. And I do not think that this should be something that you consider when you're ranking your programs. What you should consider is the night float versus 24-hour call system. That is important. And that relates back to the workload. Because the night float system is just, a 12-hour shift at night. Some people do like a week every month. Some people do just a whole month rotation of just night float. It just becomes very relaxed. It's tough the first day or two, but then you just get used to it, and that's fine. With the 24-hour call system, even if I know a lot of programs are shying away from that now, but some still say that, our ICU still has Q3 24 or Q4 24, which means that every third day you're on call for 24 hours. And typically the next day you come back, the next day, once the day is done, you would have to attend rounds as well in the morning. So it ends up being like 27 or 28 hours in the hospital. And that happens every 3 or 4 days. So you can imagine that gets really stressful, and increases the workload, increases the stress, increases the burnout. And once you go back home and you slept and stuff, and you go like, yeah, I'm gonna have the next day off anyway, that day ends up being a rest day just because you've been so tired. So to me, that should play a role. If I know that the program has 100% night float, that to me is much better than a program that has other perks, but then they have 24-hour calls. And trust me, it gets really stressful. And you can talk to, I'm sure you've talked to residents there. The 24-hour call thing is, everyone is starting to shy away from it, but it's still there, and it's very, very stressful. So I think we spent a lot of time on this slide, but really these, to me at least, these are the 10 most important factors that you need to focus on when you're coming up with your own rank list. There are factors that I think you should ignore. I don't know if you guys know Dr. Brian Kermode. He had this very nice article and video that he posted last year, and he talked about like things to buy and things to sell. And, at the time when I was reading it, a lot of things weren't really clicking for me. But now since I started, I feel like this actually makes a big difference. And I definitely agree with the things that he said. And the number one thing is actually prestige. This is going to be tough just because, you're an IMG. American students are favored over you. So the fact that you end up getting a really good place is by itself, how can I get this place and not rank it number one? This is what all of us go through. But you realize with time that prestige is not everything. If I took the other factors into consideration, and I know that a lower ranked program is going to give me what I want and end up putting me in the same place that I want anyway, whether it's fellowship or whether it's decent enough training, but it has way more perks than the program that is prestigious, then I would rank that program above the prestigious program. Because you're going to realize with time, it's just a name. And when it comes to the job market, no one cares where you did your residency as a primary care, or even where you did your fellowship. So the prestige would only matter if it's getting you into the good fellowship place. And that's why if that's the only program that's getting into the good fellowship place, definitely that should be ranked number one. But if I have a lower place that's going to get me where I am, but it's not as prestigious, but again, it doesn't have the malignant inclinations and so on, then I would rank it lower. Because with time, you're going to realize that prestigious programs, a lot of them are actually malignant. And it's not malignant in the sense that, people kill themselves or things like that. It's malignant in the sense that they're very overworked. The atmosphere there is very, like cutthroat, very malignant, because the people that work there are like, they picked the top people from the US and from other places. So everyone is just hungry to go after what they want, and it starts becoming like a conflict of interest. It starts becoming about, I'm not going to tell my co-resident about this thing just because I need to get that thing first. It's going to be about, people are not looking out for each other, and that's not how residency should be. And I'm sure by now, whoever interviewed at prestigious places, they must have picked that thing up, because a lot of these places, they have the cutthroat mentality, and they have the, gunner mentality, even in residency and fellowship. And that's not really a place where you want to train, because that's just an added stress on you. So I think that that's an important factor to ignore, actually. The second thing is the salary. A $50,000 salary in rural Michigan compared to a $70,000 salary in downtown New York is the same. If anything, the $70,000 in New York might be less, because any salary is not something that the program comes up with. This is adjusted for cost of living, and it's done by the Medicare, Medicaid, CMS thing, and they take into account everything. They take into account the inflation and the cost of living in the area and the taxes and so on. So it ends up being the same wherever you go in the US, and it's not up to the program to decide your salary. So you need to take that into consideration. Do not be, attracted to this, to the 70,000 salary that you're going to see in Boston, in New York, in Washington, DC, because these areas, the cost of living is very high, and the cost of rent and the cost of food and all of that is, higher as well. So it ends up being the same. And then also do not be discouraged if I'm getting 50,000 in the middle of nowhere, because that by itself is enough for you to be doing everything, because the rent is going to be cheaper and so on. So salary is something that you should not even look at, even though programs sometimes, they advertise it, oh, we give our residents 60,000. Well, it's not up to you. This is what Medicare had said that you're going to be giving your residents anyway. The third thing is the board pass rate. The board pass rate, up to a certain extent, it shouldn't make a difference. Like if the board pass rate is for program A is 90% and for program B is 100%, that to me is not all that much of a difference. If the program has the other things that I care about, then I know that maybe those 10% or 5%, they just weren't hardworking, or they didn't study enough, or they didn't focus enough. And that's why they failed. Or maybe it's a smaller program where they take 12 or 13, or if one person failed, that's already, 7% of the batch. So that's something that you should take with a grain of salt. When would this make a difference? If the board pass rate is like 70%. And with that, I don't think that we see that anymore, just because the ACGME is very strict about these things. And if it has that, then it implements a lot of other things that the program needs to take care of. So in general, the board pass rate is not something that you should take into consideration when you're ranking programs. And then the final thing is post-interview communication. Post-interview communication is tricky. It's very tricky, and this is a very dirty business with program directors and with applicants. Some applicants, they end up sending letters of intent to 10 programs, saying that you're my number one program. And as a result, this makes the program director not really trust a letter of intent anymore. It doesn't have the same value that it held a few years ago. So at the same time, the program director is worried about him not matching based on their list and SOPing and so on. So the program director would end up sending a very positive reply, and the applicant based on that would move the program higher up their list, and then they end up not matching there or not matching at all. So it's a very, very dirty game. And by the NRMP laws or rules, a program is not allowed to tell you how highly they're planning to rank you. There are a couple of really, really highly rated programs that end up doing that anyway, and I don't know how they get away with it. Places like Mayo Rochester and things like that, they actually end up sending their rank to match applicant list. They end up sending them emails and telling them, by the way, you're ranked to match, which obviously influences the applicants and so on. But this is against the NRMP rules. And the majority of other programs, they can't even say such a thing. So what ends up happening is you either get an email from the program director, we really liked your interview, we really liked your application, we loved you, we can't wait for you to be here. All of that doesn't say anything about how highly they ranked you, but to you, that's like a very positive sign. But I've seen that happen many times, and then the applicant doesn't end up matching there. So it's a dirty game. And same way with applicants, because applicants, they go like, no one is going to find out if I send a letter of intent to like 4 or 5 or 6 places. The chance of them communicating is very low. It's not going to happen. But what that does is, number one, it doesn't hurt you per se, but it hurts anyone that's coming after you from the same university. Because they're going to be like, this person, we got them from this university, they came last year, they sent us a letter of intent, and we ranked them highly. And then they ended up not matching at our program. They ended up matching at another program. So that means that they didn't actually rank us number one like they said. And this is a bad thing. So next time I'm going to do that, I'm not going to even interview people from that place. That's number one. Number two, in general, it makes the program directors in general lose trust in what the letter of intent really means, because it's something that's so overused now. Everyone is sending to everyone. So it doesn't have that same impact. So from the applicant standpoint and from the program director standpoint, I do not think that post-interview communication, no matter how positive it is, should influence your decision. You're going to end up, like we said, the match algorithm is applicant-centered. So even if you know that program is going to rank you highly, but I have a higher program on top, just keep the high program on top, because if you don't match there, that's fine. You're just going to fall to this program. But if I end up moving this one up when I could have matched at the better place, just because they said they're going to rank me to match anyway, it's just, you're only hurting yourself. So I do not think that any positive post-interview communication should play a role in how you rank programs. These are some helpful resources when it comes to ranking programs. After you've sat with yourself and decided on all these things, there are a few other things that you can look at. Of course, the program website and ERAS, Residence Explorer, you've used these things when you were looking at the programs before you interviewed and before you even applied, as well as Frida. There are a few other ones that have some reviews either from students there or from residents or graduates of that program. Reddit spreadsheets are one of them. If you go to the Reddit spreadsheet of every year, you're going to find like M4 impressions or intern impressions from people that are in the program itself. You take these with a grain of salt just because sometimes it might be just one person, and there is this response bias where, you know, I will not go out of my way to an online platform and write something unless, one, I really hate the program and something really bad happened and I'm going to write about it, or two, I'm in love with the program and I love it so much, so I'm going to write something about it. So you have to keep that at the back of your head when you're deciding reading online reviews, okay? If you have that at the back of your head, then you can start reading them and you take out of those opinions, you take the objective findings. If someone is saying we're working Q3 24-hour calls, even though the program website doesn't say that or something, that's a red flag. That means, because that's not something that it's not opinionated, it's a fact. But if they say that, my coworkers are not really helping me and I had a tough time and no one switched with me, it might be just anecdotal evidence. It might be just one person that had that. So I think that they should factor into what you say, but you shouldn't heavily rely on them. And don't rely on any anonymous stuff from applicants. I would just focus on either students that have been rotating there for a year or two, or the current interns. So that's for Reddit spreadsheets. Senior advice is really important. If you have a senior there from the same university, that is the best person to go to, because that is the person that's going to tell you the pros and cons and is actually going to focus on you, because they have nothing to win or lose. And they're going to trust you, not, going out and speaking to other people about it. So they're going to be telling you their actual opinion of the program. And that's something that I think you should take into consideration for sure, if you have seniors that match into that area. Or sometimes if you have seniors like, from the same place that, interviewed at some of the programs that you interviewed at, that sometimes also plays a role and adds to the input that you're going to use when you're ranking programs. The other thing is Doximity reviews. Now, Doximity has I'm sure you guys know the website by now, whoever is like ranking programs by now. Doximity has just rankings for residency programs in general. I think it ranks like the top 100 programs or something in the country, and it ranks them based on region and based on specialty and so on. The way that the Doximity rankings work is that they send an email or a survey to every MD, and they ask them to rank their top 5 programs. And then based on that, they just end up putting the rankings. So as you can see, it's not objective at all. So the rankings are not important. However, what I picked up is that for every program, Doximity has reviews, and the reviews are from the graduates of the program. And I found these really, really helpful, because usually they're a lot more detailed than Reddit or senior advice. And they're actually objective because it's someone that finished the program, is coming out on the other side and is telling you, oh, the job market was perfect. Or, oh, when I started the job, I felt very competent doing what I'm doing. Or, oh, I did not have any issues matching into fellowship. And they're anonymous. So although they are from the graduates of the program, the graduates don't share what their name is. So they can be very transparent about things. So to me, these really helped me decide things, and they helped me reiterate the pros and the cons of the program. So I think that this is something they should look at. The rankings, throw them in the trash. They are not important at all. But the personal reviews, to me, I found them really important. Accreditation status is, I talked about this when I was talking about like coming up with your program list. For now, you're probably, your ranking list is much, much shorter than the number of programs that you apply to. So I think it's well worth it to go to this link and type in your program name and make sure that they do not have any active issues with the ACGME about accreditation, or about, if they're suspended, or if there were issues of suspension in the past few years. You need to look into that, because that definitely plays a role in the things that you do, because the number of reasons that would make a program suspended by the ACGME are very limited, and they're very serious. So if I see that somewhere, it definitely moves the program lower on my list. Now, whoever knows me knows I love statistics. So this is just a few minutes about numbers. You always get this question. I'm sure you're all wondering about it, and everyone asks it. How many on my list as an IMG is good enough to guarantee that I matched? And this is impossible to answer. No one can ever tell you that. But we have some statistics, although it doesn't tell us anything, but we do have some statistics that look at, so this is, for example, internal medicine, and they look at the number of contiguous ranks, which is the number of programs that you're going to end up actually submitting to the NRMP rank order list, not the number of interviews, just the number of ranks that you end up putting. And as you can see, I mean, with one, you're more likely not to match compared to matching. With 2 and 3 ends up being about the same. And then really it shifts in your favor about 6 or 7, where you're, again, not guaranteed a match because you can end up with 15 interviews and not match. But just in terms of odds, it's more likely to match, you know, after 4 or 5 or 6, like you can see. But again, this is just some numbers, because to me, this provided me some relief that when I see some numbers around, you feel like, oh, okay, that's, you know, people can still have just 1 interview, and 200 IMGs in 2020 ended up matching, which is great. You know, yes, 600 didn't match, but 200 individual people ended up matching. So to me, that's a good thing anyway. And then this is the probability for, you know, US IMGs and non-US IMGs. And you can see that it ends up being around 90% for 8 interviews with US IMGs and about 9 interviews for non-US IMGs. That's a 90% probability of matching. With 1 interview, it's about 30%, 40% based on these numbers. You know, it's just something, it's just there, but it doesn't tell us a whole lot. Now, very quickly, this was a webinar by the ECFMG in conjunction with the NRMP about how to create your order list. So once the rank order list opens, this is exactly how the algorithm is going to look like. You're going to go in, of course, as soon as you registered and you put in all your information and data and stuff, you're going to end up going to the rank order list. And then this is typically how you search for a program. So you just put in find program. It's going to ask for the NRMP program code, which you can get from ERAS or from Residency Explorer, not Residency Explorer, from ERAS or the program website. You just end up searching for the program, and then it ends up pulling it here, and then you just add it. It's a very, very simple thing, and it's just going to be added this way. And then overall, once you're done adding them, let's say this person has these 4, you end up certifying your list. Certifying is really just finalizing the list, because if you just add them here, that doesn't mean that it's submitted yet. Certifying is what submits it. So you certify, and just to make sure, they ask you for your password again. As soon as you put in your password, it is certified. You can certify a list as many times as you want before the deadline. So if you certified once, that doesn't mean that you're set. It just means that the NRMP right now has a list. And if you end up doing nothing, by the deadline, they're going to end up using that list. So it's really important to end up certifying. And they make it very simple because they put in this status here. So this is what you're going to end up looking for once you're done applying and doing everything. You need to make sure that the applicant status here says that you're certified, the fee status is paid, and the verification status, which the NRMP does just to make sure that all your stuff is up to date. You have your steps, you have your scores, you have everything done, and you are ranking some programs. So typically when you see these 3, certified, paid, verified, you're good to go. Okay, and this is how your list is going to look. Supplementaries for other things. I don't think we need to go into these details anyway, but that's for people that are applying into advanced programs and prelims and so on. I found this, and this to me was really helpful because I looked very, very hard to find it. And this is from the 2019 match. And it tells you how likely for IMG specifically, because you're going to find this information. It's available for US MDs and USDOs in the NRMP book list, but there is nothing about the IMGs. So this was in the webinar that was done by ECFMG, and they actually took the data for the US and non-US IMGs, and they put it for the matches by rank. Okay, so based on your ranking, how many people ended up matching in their first choice and second choice and third choice and unmatched. Okay, so to me, this slide was really, I mean, I memorized the slide from how much stress I was on. I just every time I'm stressed, I just come here and I look at this. And this is, you know, more or less reassuring because it tells you, first of all, if I got that first email on Monday that I matched, so I'm going to be only part of those 60% here. And then out of those 60%, almost, you know, 80% or 75% probably are going to match into one of their top 3 programs. So that really ends up being where your primary focus is going to be. These are the ones where you really need to think, how should I rank them? Because odds are you're going to end up matching in one of those. And 50% of the time, if you actually got the NRMP match email that you actually matched, then 50% of the time you're going to match at your first program, which is really, really good, you know? And then about 65% into your top 2 programs. What does this tell me? This tells me that I taken all these factors and all this consideration into focusing on my top 3 programs, because these are most likely where you're going to end up matching. If I'm having a lot of issues deciding between my number 5 and number 6, or number 4 and number 5, you know, and just go with your gut. Hopefully you're not going to end up matching there anyway, but it's, I'll talk about this in the next slide. You shouldn't rank a program that you're not happy matching at. But if I decided that I'm okay matching at either or, and I still don't know which one to rank higher, just go with your gut. Odds are you're going to end up matching higher. And based on, you know, at least this is very anecdotal, just my friends that applied last year from Alfaisal, everyone that I knew, no one dropped below their 2nd rank. So out of 20 people that applied last year, the lowest I know was the 2nd rank, which goes hand in hand with these statistics. Of course, that's given that you matched. If I'm just looking at it from outside, like now, yeah, you have a 30% chance of matching into your top program and a 42% chance of matching into your top 2 programs. But once you do get that match, then I think you're much more relieved by that. And the other thing, which is really important also, you can see here that the US IMGs and non-US IMGs, there isn't really a whole lot of difference in terms of where they end up after they match. Some very quick final tips. Rank your top program first. We talked about this. Your application, the match algorithm is applicant centered. Even if I think that, you know, this program is crazy, there is no way in hell they're going to take me, there is no way in hell they're going to look at an IMG, you end up ranking it anyway because you're not losing anything. You can put your number 2 program, it's not going to affect you. Number 2, and this is the most important one, do not rank programs you do not want to attend. I've heard this so many times from some of my friends that ended up matching at really bad places, and they go like, why did I do this to myself? If I know that this program is the bottom of my list and I'm just like praying to God that I really don't want this program and I really wouldn't be happy matching there, just don't put it. Don't put it. Don't give yourself that option. Don't give yourself the added stress. Don't give yourself the disappointment on match day when you match into a program that you hated. So this is really important. Yes, I know it's for us, especially as IMGs, when you get interviews and stuff, it's like, oh, I got 5. How can I remove one of them? Like, that's just decreasing my chances of matching. Well, it's decreasing your chances into a program that you were not happy with anyway. You knew that it's malignant and that the program director is not supportive and that it's not going to match you into the fellowship that you want. Then why are you putting it? It's not just about the match. If things ended up happening where I'm not going to match there, I'll figure out something. I'll work on step 3. I'll work on research. I'll work on something. I'll apply next year. So that to me is much better than applying and staying in that program for 3 years, because the match agreement is binding by law. If I end up matching in a program, by law, I am required to attend the 3 years. So I think that this is something that you really need to take into consideration when you are ranking programs. Number 3, do not wait until the last minute to enter your rank order list. I would say by last minute, I mean the last day or 2, because the NRMP, everyone is doing the stuff on the last couple of days. Sometimes it glitches. Last year, this did not happen. I know people that, you know, they did it in the last day and things were fine, but you really don't want yourself to be put in that position where you're like, I'm so stressed. What if I don't have my rank order list? What if it's not in? Because if it's actually not in, you will not match. It's that simple. No matter how many interviews you got, you will not match there. So make sure that, you know, you have 5 weeks. You really don't have anything that you're focusing on right now. Take your time deciding, but certify your list a few days before, and really do not make any last minute changes to your rank order list. This is stressful. This is important, but it's really stressful because you go like, and trust me, this happens. Just when you know that it's about to happen, it's a few hours before, oh, maybe I made that mistake switching between my number 3 and number 4. Maybe I need to go back and reverse it. You know, you need to trust the process. You spent a lot of time deciding based on all these factors and all these things. You spent a lot of time and you ended up coming up with this list, and it was an informed decision at the time. Do not go back. Do not change your mind based on a very, you know, just a hunch in your gut that started, because this is like, you know, changing an answer in the last minute during an exam. odds are you're going to change it to the wrong answer. And it's going to be that right answer that you put at the beginning. So give yourself time now, think about things really well. And really, when it comes to the past few days, just ignore the NRMP. Do not even log into that website. Just leave it. Make sure that, I did my things. I studied this for 2-3 weeks. I did all the variables and stuff, and I came up with this list, and this is my final list. Yes, I'm not sure of a few things, but this is it. I made my decision. I will not make any last minute changes, because trust me, you're going to end up regretting it in the end. Even if you match at that place, sometimes you're going to get thoughts, oh, what if I matched there? Or what if I did that? Or what if So do not leave any room for guilt. Make an informed decision and stick to it. This is my last slide, I think. Final point, statistics do not matter. In the end, none of us are just numbers. Yes, I showed you some statistics with the NRMP stuff. I showed you some statistics when it comes to, the first choice and the second choice and so on. In the end, you are one data point. You can end up doing the impossible, and you can end up, even if it's like a guaranteed chance of matching, and I have so many interviews and I have so many good connections with the program and have so much positive feedback and my application is strong, you can end up not matching. And it's happened before. It's happened. I know people that had the one interview and they were so devastated, but they ended up matching. And I know people that had many, many interviews and they ended up not matching. So none of us are, just data that are, they just go with this trend that we see in terms of graphs. We're all just very different data points. And, it's a very random process. A lot of thought goes into it, but it's extremely random, and really anything can happen. So there are no guarantees here. There are no guarantees to whether you will not match, and there are no guarantees to whether you will match. Even if by this point you did not have any interviews, some people end up soaping, and they end up soaping in places better than they would have gotten if they had like some other interviews. So just, you did your hard work. For now, you just have the one last thing of focusing on your rank order list. Once that is done, just submit it, enjoy your time before intern year starts, and just, try to let go of things, because nothing you do now is going to change any outcomes. For now, it's up to, of course, God, first of all, and then number two, up to the match process and how things go. Really, nothing you do now, the worrying or the adding stress to yourself or anxiety, nothing is going to change whatever happens. It's just a very long waiting game, unfortunately. And then match day is going to come on March 18th. And then inshallah, everyone's going to be happy with where they ended up matching. So that's my talk. Thank you very much. Let's start having some questions if there are any questions. And yeah, the graph that I showed with the contiguous ranks, I showed that for internal medicine, by the way. It wasn't for all IMGs, it was just for internal medicine.
Assalamu alaikum, Doctor.
Wa alaikum salam.
I just want to ask a little bit, can you explain more about contiguous ranking?
Yeah, so this just means so let me show you. I think it's easier to show you here. So the number of, you're going to end up applying to, let's say, 200 programs, and you ended up getting 10 interviews, okay? And then you ended up, out of those 10, 3 of them, you weren't really very happy with them, and you felt like these places are not really that good. So I'm going to end up, the number of programs that I'm actually submitting for the match algorithm to take into account are just going to be the 7. So the number of contiguous ranks for me is 7 in that case. And that's the number of programs that you're going to put in here. So it's not the number of interviews you got, it's the number of programs I'm going to end up sending. That's all. That's really it. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, I hope it does. Letter of intent, what is your advice on that? And what is the best language to use when sending it to my number 2 or 3 programs? My advice when sending it to your number 2 or 3 programs is do not send it, okay? It's useless. If you're not telling the program explicitly that they're your number 1, you're basically telling them explicitly that they're not your number 1. So if I send something and I say I'm very interested in your program and I'm planning to rank it highly, that literally is telling them I'm not planning to do it first. So you're better off just not sending anything. Okay. So I do not agree with anyone sending any LOIs to number 2 or number 3 programs. When it comes to sending it to your number 1, you know, there are very mixed reviews about this. You will see if you go on Reddit and you read a few programs, there are a few programs where people said that, you know, interns are in the program and they said that if you actually end up sending the letter of intent, sometimes that program moves you up the list. So that can maybe sometimes happen. But for the majority of programs, the ranking order list for them, for the applicants, is already decided based on the meeting with the interview scores and with your application. And based on that email that you're going to send, no one is going to move you up or down. So that's my personal opinion. I do not think that letters of intent make any difference, and I do not recommend sending them. If you will send them, however, you only send it to your number 1 program and you make it very clear, very short, you are my number 1 program, and that's it. Do not even go near sending to your number 2 or 3. Because if anything, this, like if I get an email as a program director saying that I'm planning to rank you highly, that basically is telling them that you're not the number 1 program. That actually is in itself enough to move you down the list. Okay. More questions?
I do have one. Hi, my name is Halway. I just wanted to ask, like, if you do have like an idea about the advanced programs, like, do you recommend ranking those advanced programs that do not guarantee you a preliminary spot high on the list or not?
So what are you applying into?
Neurology.
Neurology. So, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about neurology in general, but I know that, you know, by now you do have some advanced programs and you do have some categorical programs. So at least as far as I know, based on my friends that applied to neurology last year, typically the categorical program is more, it's just more guaranteed since they you know, they guarantee the prelim based on their own program. But I don't think that I would, you know, if you have an advanced interview at a good place, I would not drop it. I would just rank it lower than my categoricals, because what's going to end up happening is if you match into that advanced place and you don't end up matching into a prelim, you're going to have to soap for a prelim, and soaping for a prelim is easier knowing that, you know, they know that you have an advanced program, but it's still a hassle. So I know one of my friends that actually matched into an advanced program last year, and they did not have a prelim program. They did not even have any prelim interviews. And what they ended up doing was, of course, they tried soap didn't work. So they ended up reaching out to the program director of the advanced program where they matched, and they ended up asking them if they can talk to the prelim program director at the same hospital and to open up a spot for them. And that actually ended up working for that person specifically. But it's a hassle and it's stressful, because if you don't have a prelim program, then if you don't have a prelim program, I mean by July, then you're basically forfeiting that advanced program anyway. So to me, if I'm having advanced and no prelims, I would rank it lower than my categoricals. Then again, I did not apply to neurology, so I don't know all the logistics, but that's just my personal experience.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Would you rank a university-affiliated community hospital above a highly ranked university which has a poor work-life balance? This goes back, and this is a very important question, because actually, you know, I think all of us are going to have to make that distinction at some point. So it goes back to the 10 factors that I put in. If everything is better in that university-affiliated community hospital, including fellowships, then I would rank it higher. Yes, I would not care about the prestige, and I would rank it higher, as long as I'm making sure that they're matching fellowships. So if they're matching fellowships and everyone is happy and everything else seems good, and that other university program, residents are overworked, yes, I 100% would do that. And actually, that's what I did in terms of my rank order list. That's what I did. I had a really good, you know, university affiliated community hospital, and I ranked it above a university hospital just because that university hospital, although it's prestigious and so on, it's just, it has malignant vibes and malignant intentions. The residents are busy. So I'm like, you know, as long as I'm going to where I'm going to end up going anyway, it has the fellowships, then I'm okay. How should we rank new programs? That really ends up being about you and your preferences. New programs are hit or miss. You're going to be that first batch. You're going to be, the program leadership is going to be very receptive to your feedback, and they're going to be very flexible, and you're going to end up having a lot of, say into how the program is structured. So these are all really good things. On the other hand, you're not going to have any seniors. So you're just going to be the intern, and you're just going to the attendance. So that teaching process, you might be lacking a bit in it. Number two, you don't know how they're going to do in terms of fellowships. You're going to be that first class, so things might be a bit tricky. So that's also there. So it just depends on your priorities. Definitely, if I did have better places, and I have places that have established graduates, I would rank those higher. But I would honestly, personally, if it was up to me, if I had a new program interview, I would still end up ranking it, but I would just rank it on the lower side. Other people would say, I wouldn't even rank it because I don't want this stress and I don't want that stuff. But to me, I feel like, it's a different kind of adventure. And to me, just based on my personality, I'm okay dealing with something that is completely new. So it just depends on you, but it's definitely lower than established programs. Hope that helps. Okay, so I had this other question. Now that you spent half a year being a resident with no family in the US, how high do you think I should rank a program that is lower in quality if it's the only area I have close friends, compared to a program that is slightly better, but I would have absolutely no support system? Based on how you phrased it, just slightly better, I would definitely say rank the program where you have family around higher. Support system is really, really important. Residency gets really tough, really lonely. Sometimes you just need, someone to support you, whether that's family, or a lot of times people don't have family in the US, so friends. If you don't have any of that, and I have a lot of my friends, and myself included, that don't have any family or friends around the area, it ends up taking a toll on you, because the days are going to be long. And it's not like something that, I'm just going to hold off for a month and then I'll deal with it. No, this is going to be 3 years of your life. I'm fortunate enough to have someone that matched with me here in the program who was actually a graduate of the same batch. So, but even with that, and he lives about, 2 minutes away from me, but we end up seeing each other just like maybe once a month. And that's how busy we are. But that in itself, for me, like it still helps. So if I'm having family, like specific, because you said family, so if I'm actually having family in the area, that to me like goes higher above anything. That to me is the highest thing, as long as I know that that program is not gonna, reduce my chances of fellowship. Yes, if the other place is just slightly higher, I would still rank the family place higher. And I think, if you ask other people, take some more opinions from people that match, and I think everyone is going to tell you that same thing. We tend to focus so much on the career, and I need that good program, I need that good fellowship, and that's it. But then you end up forgetting yourself, because you need that support system. You're not going to be able to do well during residency if I don't have a good support system and family around me. Yeah, you're welcome. Any more questions? Does it matter if almost all the residents from the program matched in a particular region nearby the program, or only in-house fellowships rather than matching widely? That's a really good question. That's a really, really good question. Typically, the place that matches widely gives an impression that that program is more well-known, so they can go anywhere and they wouldn't have an issue matching. And when would that be important? That would be important if I know that, for example, I'm on the West Coast, I have family on the East Coast, and then I know that eventually I want to move to the East Coast. But the program that's in the West Coast only matches people in the West Coast, Well, there's another program that matches people all over the country, then yeah, I would be more inclined to go to that program, because I know I'm not going to have issues. However, if to me, the region where I'm going to end up matching doesn't really make a difference, then that thing is okay, even if they only match in-house, even if they only match around the area, because typically what ends up happening is, of course, people around the area are going to end up having priority over people coming from different places in the country. So if I'm having a place that is matching people from far away from the country, the only thing that it says is it's a testament to the program that they have really good training and that they're well known. But if to me, I don't really care about moving in different places, and the same place that's only matching in-house, but ends up matching anyway, then I really wouldn't take that into consideration. I would focus on the other factors. Let me know if there are any questions. If not, this is my email. Okay, good. There's another question. I'm applying for IM. I interviewed at a university program which lost its accreditation for neurosurgery. Could you kindly let me know if it would impact the future of IM residency? These are very unrelated. The different programs in different hospitals are very, very, very independent of each other. They have different ACGME rules based on different specialties. They have different program directors and different ancillary staff and different criteria for picking fellowships. Some places you find that for example, the GS training program is really, really good, and it has a lot of good training and good candidates, and it's not malignant, but the IM program, the residents are very overworked and very busy and so on. So these are different things. As long as you're not picking up any other red flags in that university program for IM, then I would be okay. I wouldn't really take the neurosurgery accreditation thing into account. And neurosurgery actually frequently loses its accreditation just because they have very, very, number one, very high standards. And then in neurosurgery, you're much more likely to overwork the residents like crazy. So they frequently exceed the work hour regulations, the 80-hour works and stuff. So it's not the first time that I've heard of a neurosurgery residency program losing its accreditation. If uncertain about future options after residency, what visa would you prefer? I mean, really, if you want flexibility, it's the H-1B. Like it's that simple. If you're not sure, if I know for a fact that I don't know if I'm going to end up having a good enough fellowship or not, or nothing, or all that, I don't even know if I'm going to end up staying in the US or not, H-1B is flexible and it makes sense. The only option where I would pick a J1 over H-1B is if I have a, number one, if I know for a fact I'm only going to the US to do my training and I'm coming back, J1 is much easier that way because you're not going to have to deal with any paperwork except for the statement of need, and that's it. Or if I know I'm going to go into a very long fellowship and I'm not really sure how I'm going to be able to switch my status and who's going to be able to sponsor me in the 6 years, then J1 would make more sense. Otherwise, for flexibility, it's J1. For flexibility, sorry, it's H-1B. Do you think, okay. So we have quite a few questions here. So do you think having STEP in the application will increase your chances? And does step 3 matter for your fellowship? I'm assuming by step you mean step 3. Personal opinion, I did my step 3 in December. I emailed the programs in December when I ended up getting my results, December of last year. And I got 2 interviews after it. So it could help. Other people didn't really do a whole lot. I know others that applied last year that didn't really get any interviews after it. So, I mean, just on paper, it makes more sense that you're making the program director's life easier, because the program director always has to worry about the residents, their interns, taking step 3 on time and passing on time. Because if they don't, that's a big, big flag for the program. So if 2 applicants are equivalent, but the only difference is one did step 3, I would definitely take the step 3 applicant over that. But objectively, I don't really see that a whole lot happening. With people that are applying with step 3, I didn't really see that they were much better in terms of like the interviews they got or so on. So anecdotal. And in terms of, does it matter for fellowship? You get this question asked all the time. And I think the consensus is, I mean, I looked a lot on Reddit and I talked to a few fellows here, and really the consensus is no one cares. Even for competitive fellowships, I talked to cardiology fellows. So no one cares. It would like be a bit of a weird thing if I'm scoring 260s in step 1 and step 2 and I end up scoring 200 in step 3. Like that's a big jump. Like maybe that would raise some questions. But if you're passing comfortably, that's it. You don't really, no one is gonna like, especially with fellowship. Unfortunately, the most important thing for fellowship right now, after the program director letter, is actually step one, for us at least. So they're still gonna look at step one, and then after step one is actually step two. So the step three is still lower on the list for fellowship program directors based on the program director survey that they had. I think it was published in 2018. And anecdotally, just based on what we see here, the fellowship program directors, really no one cares. It's just, it becomes about connections and about the program director letter and about research and about your rotations. They could not care less about step three, but you need to pass it. Of course, if you failed, it's a big, big red flag. If we applied to IM and couldn't find a categorical position, is it beneficial to choose an IM prelim through SOAP or reapply the next cycle? That is a very, very, very good question. I personally don't know. Because I know that with prelim IMs, it's easier to find prelim IMs through SOAP compared to categorical IMs. But I know that it's also harder to match into, because I'm assuming if you want to do a prelim IM year and you want to directly go into your second year, you're going to have to end up applying for advanced positions, like just PGY-2 positions. So these are much harder to find when you're applying for the match. If you're applying and you want to do just prelim IM, and then you want to repeat IM categorical next year anyway, if that was your question, I don't think that it makes a big difference. Because number one, you know, you're staying that year anyway, and you're going to end up repeating PGY-1 anyway. So doing intern year twice sounds really stressful. I had one of my friends that did that, and it's really, really stressful. Like, there is no point. And number two, if program directors next year look at your application and they go like, oh, she's in prelim IM, the first thing that comes to their mind, what would be the first thing? It's probably that she's applying to you know, like neurology or radiology or something that is an advanced program, and she didn't match, and she's switching her career into IM. So maybe she didn't really want IM all that much. So that's just what I think program directors would be doing. And actually, based on my friend that had prelim last year, that's how things were for them, because otherwise they had a really good application, but you know, they had that thing where prelim and not prelim and so on. So I think that did play a role in how program directors viewed their application. So if you're asking about whether it increases your chances for matching next year into categorical IM, I don't think so. So just apply the next cycle. In the future, will having a score for STEP rather than pass-fail make a difference in your residency application, or will they just consider everything as pass-fail? We can't really tell because it didn't happen yet. I mean, the first match season where people are going to be using pass-fail, like American med students, is going to be not next year, the year after. And we'll see what happens then. But it's my inclination that whenever you have a score, it's just easier to filter. So I think whoever has a step 1 score before the pass-fail, it's going to end up staying with them, no matter how far they advance. So for us, of course, it will, like in fellowship and future fellowships. And even for people that did it this year, or they're applying to the next match, or the match after, when everyone else is pass-fail, I think that having a score just makes things easier to filter. And the 240 then is still going to be the same as the 240 now. It still tells the program director that you're a good applicant. So why would they favor a pass over a 240? You know, that's, at least that's my guess, but none of this happened. So I'd be curious to see how it ends up happening. Okay. So if the program I'm a research fellow in is highly competitive and no guarantee they would rank me, what is your advice? Rank the surrounding less competitive higher? No. This is what we talked about. Even if your chance of matching there is 0%, what are you losing if you end up matching, if you end up ranking at number 1? Just rank at number 1. If they're not going to take you, it's fine. You'll drop to your number 2. But what if they actually wanted to take you and you did it as number 2? Like, there is absolutely nothing that you're losing if you rank at number 1. So always rank in terms of your preference, not in terms of your matching chances. That's very important. I interviewed at a program that is now on ACGME probation, and they emailed us saying not to worry. Is that a red flag? That's all the red flags in the world. That is literally the definition. If you open, you know, red flag in a dictionary, this is what you would find. So this is a big red flag. And if I were you, I wouldn't even rank that program. I would explore more why they're on probation, but odds are it's a serious reason. And I don't know about you, but I would not be comfortable going there. And of course, they're going to say, don't worry, because they're worried about them soaping next year. Like, what's worse than being on ACGME probation? It's being on ACGME probation and soaping. So of course, they're going to say that. So definitely that's a, that's a bad thing. what do you think are the top factors for a program to rank an applicant? And for non-US IMG without US clinical experience, does that negatively affect the ranking of an applicant so bad? I mean, you know, just it depends on the program, of course. The typical things, the scores, the research, the letters, the interview experience, all of that plays a role. Different programs have different criteria that they use to rank, but that comes down to it. Clinical experience is a big thing. The majority of my friends that didn't have clinical experience ended up not matching. So unfortunately, it is a big thing just because they want to see that you know the American system and you have letters from US trained physicians, attendings that are working here. So that definitely, in my opinion, I think that it does negatively impact. However, I do have friends that did not have US clinical experience and they matched. So that's just something for you to know. They did end up matching. And it's actually not one or two, it's a few. So it did happen. That was last year. So it does happen, but it definitely decreases your chances and you end up having less interviews. Should I rank medium size, large size over small programs if they have similar fellowship match rates? And will it be an advantage if program has multiple hospitals and VA experience rather than single center? So personally, I think that I'm a fan of medium-sized programs. My program is a medium-sized program and I think it's perfect. We have 12 residents every year and it is absolutely perfect. It has a good balance of both, but that's up to me. If the fellowship match rates are the same anyway, and this is the only difference between them, it's up to you. It's up to your personality. But like I talked about the medium and small size stuff, and I told you with medium and large, you're more likely to have backup, and you're more likely to have more flexibility in your scheduling and so on. So that's the only thing. But if you want like a close knit small program, that's also, you know, some people prefer that. If a program has multiple hospitals, I used to think that the VA thing is, you know, I can't wait to go to the VA and that's a really good experience and it's an added thing. After I tried it, it is, I'm not a fan of VA. The system is very messy. The patient care is horrible compared to the regular patient care that we used to. I don't think that you get exposed to a whole lot of different learning experience and that teaching mentality is not really there. So I would not rank a program higher just because it has VA experience, honestly. I mean, it's not a negative, but at the same time, it is not something that I would rank based on. If my step one score is low, would you advise applying later to 2024 rather than 2023? What is the point? I don't think that makes any difference to your application, because if your step one score is low in 2023, it's also going to be low in 2024. So my guess is work really hard on step two, of course. So that's your primary aim right now. You need to work really hard on step two, and do not finish step two quickly even when you're not ready with your preparation, just because I want to catch the 2023 cycle. I would not do that. I would just take my time doing step two and try to really improve your step two score. But if you ended up doing that and your step two score is improved and your application is ready by 2023, then I would just apply in 2023. I don't think that there needs to be a 1 year wait, because if anything, that's only going to decrease their chances if you already graduate. So I think really focus on step two, try to get a higher score. We know people that had lower step one scores and they ended up matching, so it's not the end of the world. But do not compromise getting a good score in step two for applying to the match, you know, just make that balance. Three years at the VA? Interesting. So someone is saying I interviewed at a program where I will spend the 3 years at a VA. Do you think that's a red flag? Would you rank that program? So typically the ones I know where you spend 3 years at the VA are the military residency program. So I'm not sure if that's a military residency program or not, but that is very fishy. To me, that is very, very fishy, because the VA training, like I said, is not the greatest. And the highest I've seen, one of the actually good university programs I interviewed at, it had like 18 months of VA experience. So like half. But just like 3 years completely, like, I mean, it's not a red flag, but I would definitely, that would be the lowest program on my list. And I would actually double check the 3 year thing, because I think what they mean is you're going to do a month every year, because a lot of programs, they do that. So for the 3 years, you're going to do a month or 2 months, or sometimes even 3 months during every year. So that's fine. But I really don't think that it's just 3 years at the VA, because otherwise it's going to be a VA residency program. And yeah, you can, All right. Okay. So this is my email. Reach out to me with any questions. The other people that have my phone number, you can also reach out at any time. I was very OCD about this program stuff and ranking stuff and all of that stuff. So I looked a lot into like the IM programs and the fellowships and all the experiences. So because this is how I relieved stress last year. So if you had any specific questions about like program A versus program B and stuff, just let me know. Maybe I can help. But otherwise, best of luck to everyone. Inshallah, you're all going to do great, and we'll hear great news from everyone and on March 18th, inshallah. All right. Thank you all. I hope you have a good day.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for the presentation. It was very beneficial. We truly value your experience and guidance. I'd also like to thank AMBOSS for their constant support in helping students secure their careers. To everyone in the audience, thank you for joining us today, and our team hopes that you found this session as informative as we did. If you have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat now, or you can unmute and ask your questions. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and to subscribe to our YouTube channel to receive the latest updates about all of our upcoming events. You can also scan the QR codes on the screen right now if you wish to attend our upcoming webinars or watch them on our YouTube channel. I'll also insert these links in the chat below. Give me just a second. And if you have any further questions or would like to contact us in the future, you can do so by using this link. Thank you, Doctor, again, and everyone in the audience. We hope to see you again in the future. Wishing you all a great day ahead.
Thank you very much, Luqman.
Thank you.